All right, so lady, gentlemen, should Ahmed al-Sharaa be trusted? As always, we begin with a quick fire round, 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance on the matter, and we pick up the conversation from there. So, Jasmine, please take the lead. Your 30 seconds are on.
Sure. So thank you for having me today on this show. I believe that trust really needs to be built through actions and not statement. So really what matters now is the direction that Syria is going in, the commitments that we're going to try and see what is going to be made on the ground towards stability, counterterrorism, and regional cooperation. So the international community, the U.S. included, is going to be keeping a close eye on that. And so what we want to see is measurable progress, transparency, and reliable, responsible government.
Giran, your thoughts?
Well, I think from now on, we shouldn't be establishing new systems based around individuals and personalities. And that goes for Ahmed al-Sharaa as well. In the Middle East, we've long relied on building systems around individuals. But as we see in examples ranging all the way from Gaddafi to Saddam Hussein to Assad himself, establishing new systems are not progressive when they revolve around specific individuals, and especially when these individuals have very troubling backgrounds and histories. So in order to gain trust, we need to make something institutional, we need to make something democratic, and we need to make something progressive, not build around personalities, especially those that come from jihadist backstories.
So it's not the man, it's the mechanism. Ariel Oseran, last but not least, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it is a question of who are we asking? Should they trust al-Sharaa? If we're talking about Israel, I think Israel should give al-Sharaa the benefit of the doubt so far, despite Israel's military excursion inside Syrian territory. The new Syrian government has not attacked Israel, has not retaliated. In fact, they've engaged in constructive discourse with Israel. So as far as Israel is concerned, I think it should move as it should move with everyone in the Middle East, as respect him and suspect him, but they should give al-Sharaa the benefit of the doubt. As for minorities in Syria, if we're looking at the actions of this current government, unfortunately, they do not have so much reason to provide al-Sharaa with the benefit of the doubt.
All right, lady, gentlemen, please feel free to engage in the conversation from now on. So maybe we should begin our conversation from that point exactly Ariel just made about Syria's minorities. We have Druze, we have Alawites, we have Christians. They do have reasons to fear him. But so can al-Sharaa really govern for all Syrians, or is it just window dressing? Jasmine.
So what we're hoping for, of course, is a unity of Syria, a stable Syria. What we want to see is Syria become a voice not only for its larger population, but also for the minorities. Syria in itself, and I visited Syria several times. I've spoken to the people on the ground. There have been several Jewish Syrian delegations to visit Damascus, and what we've seen has been positive feedback, even within the Jewish community. And so this is the foundation of Syria. It's multilayeral. There come people from all three Abrahamic religions, multilayeral ethnicities. And so they used to live as one. They used to get along with their neighbors. And that's what we want to continue promoting for. And, after this brutal fall of the previous regime, it's really made the on-the-ground situation much harder. People are in starvation mode. They're still recovering from a post-conflict. It's only been 11 months since the fall of the regime. So what we're hoping for, like I said, measurable progress and seeing how these minorities are going to be protected, their rights protected, and their dignity maintained.
So Giran, is minorities the first test, so to speak, for al-Sharaa's ability to rule?
Well, if minorities were the first test, then he's unfortunately failed miserably up until now. I mean, we have to go with the evidence that we have been provided up until now. I know leaders, especially politicians, can be very pragmatic, can be very tactical, and they can say the nice words and sentences, but they have to back this up with action. And unfortunately, in the last 10 months, the actions that we have seen show one of two things. Either al-Sharaa is still of the jihadist mindset, and that's how he wants to govern Syria, or he is unable to control the factions within the loosely coalesced forces of the HTS and the SNA, and he's unable to control them. Now, I actually do not know which scenario is even
worse.
worse, and it's even more dangerous. So in terms of what we've seen, the evidence that we have been provided so far, it's very dangerous. And that's why the question ultimately comes down to this. Do we believe that the people of Syria, all ethnicities and all faiths of Syria, do they deserve democracy? Should we about the system that will be established instead of the person that will be leading it? So, we can talk about whether we trust certain politicians or certain leaders, but if we don't think of this as a fundamental issue of what kind of country the people of Syria deserve and what kind of country the people of the Middle East at large deserve, then I feel like we will ultimately fail and will be constantly completing the same mistakes of the past.
Yeah, so intention or inability, which is worse, a tough call, so to speak, Ariel Oseran. And given Syria's reality and history, perhaps pragmatism, as in the one who can achieve stability of sorts, is actually the smartest move.
Look, there's giving him the benefit of the doubt, but the question is, does al-Sharaa have control over all elements in his government, mainly elements in the defense ministry, in the military apparatus? We have received proof that that is not the case with regards to atrocities committed against the Alawites and against the Druze. We know for a fact that there were elements in the government official forces who participated. And add to that the fact that you have tens of thousands of foreign fighters now, some of whom have been incorporated in the official apparatus. Syrian sources I'm speaking to are saying, look, al-Sharaa needed those forces in order to take control over Syria. Now, the alternative for those are the members of the former Assad regime who would take their place. But in order to rehabilitate them, also in the eyes of the Syrian public, would require time. And the question is, in the interim, what do you do with those tens of thousands of foreign fighters? However, these foreign fighters are a destabilizing element in an already unstable reality. Let's just look at what happened over the weekend. The 2 rockets launched at El Mazeh, a former IRGC stronghold in Syria. Obviously, the usual suspects are various Islamist elements, perhaps even ISIS, but that has nothing to do with the foreign fighters. So really, you have so much instability. And again, if we are giving President Ahmed al-Sharaa the benefit of the doubt, he is trying to stabilize a situation that is unstable with an unstable force. So really, all the odds are against him, and that is why we are seeing this open embrace on the part of the international community to try and provide him all the conditions he needs to rebuild Syria in a proper way.
Because at the end and at the beginning, it's all a game of alternatives, obviously, not just in Syria, but everywhere. So you've mentioned all odds against him. Should al-Sharaa fail, what's the fallout, Jasmine? Can the Syria collapse back into chaos, or does someone else emerge as the savior?
So, that's really the biggest thing that we've all been trying to work for and advocate for is we want Syria, and we consider Syria a swing state. It was swung to the east previously under the previous Assad regime. Now we want to swing it to the west. We want it to become allies of the United States, allies and friends of the United States allies. We want security talks in place with Israel. These keys are so important. So Syria does not be swung back to the Iranian regime, the Russian and Chinese camp. And it's very easy for it to happen, as Ariel was saying, because there's so many factors within the government right now that are either unstable or unsure of. And so having that security with the West is really essential and is really going to be able to
but Jasmine, if it is so easy to spiral back into Russian and Chinese and Iranian influence, that maybe it signals that something's off.
So I will tell you from what I've seen from people there on the ground, the people want to be associated with the West. So let's say, the Syrian government is a larger voice for the people. Essentially that's what we would like to believe. The people want to be associated with America. They want regional stability and regional these regional talks and ties. So the people are ready for the change. And so this is, I think, what's also propelling this type of momentum where we're seeing these talks being had in the White House and these security negotiations.
So Giran, you've mentioned that the minority test is until now a failure? What would be the next tell, so to speak, for the direction it is going at?
So before I answer that, I just
Please.
quickly want to just add a point, because
Please.
I actually agree with Jasmine that we do ultimately we want a Syria that is Western leaning, Western facing, and as Jasmine says, the people of Syria also want to establish values that are reminiscent of the West and not of the old dictatorships of the past. And I just think that the way to establish that is, rather than invest heavily in one individual or one faction within the country, is to establish institutions that can represent the will of the people that want to be engaged with the West. Because if there are Western structures, if there are structures that enable the people to express their will in engaging with Western values and a more progressive outlook, then that is much more reliable than relying on just certain individuals or factions within a country. And I think, to answer your question, the next test will be the negotiations between the SDF and Damascus. I think that will give us a huge indication as to which direction Syria will go and what kind of Syria we will ultimately end up with. Because, as you know, the negotiations between the SDF and Damascus is not just a negotiation of two different factions or two different political entities, but of two different visions, of governance, of two different visions of societal values. And so
we shouldn't leave it for luck, so to speak, not just a glitch of this or that leader, but again, a mechanism that will enable democracy to prosper. And in this respect, Ariel, perhaps more on a philosophical level, if you will, if we reject the mere notion that al-Sharaa can evolve from jihadist to a leader, aren't we essentially rejecting the notion that people can transform?
Look, there's the famous statement, where you sit is where you stand. When you're the head of a Islamist militia, you have your own considerations, but then when you're put at the head of a state, your positions could somewhat change. But again, I agree with what my colleagues have been saying, that you need to judge the character according to his actions, and so far the actions have been very positive. But I do want to turn our attention to one event that took headlines in Syria over the weekend. It was an event that was promoted by a Palestinian group, but at least the banner of this event, under the title Tufan al-Aqsa, the flood of al-Aqsa, was supposed to take place in the public library of Aleppo. This banner has the official logo of the Syrian Culture Ministry. Now, this event, due to public outrage, that a lot of it was sparked from elements here in Israel, this event was immediately canceled, and it was also elements close to the government distanced the culture ministry from this event, saying that it never received official authority from the government to have this event. But I think this does show that, as Jasmine saying, we would perhaps like to believe, or even if it is true, that the majority of Syrians do want to align themselves with the West, do seek prosperous and peaceful relations with Israel. Unfortunately, there are elements inside the country, extreme elements, that are trying to push it away. This happens in every country, so we shouldn't single out Syria for having extremist elements, because we know that pretty much every country has such elements. But again, this is one example of an incident that further strains the benefit of the doubt that we are trying to give the new administration in Damascus.
Jasmine, briefly, before we take a quick break, do you think it's indicative? Is it like a rare moment of honesty, or was it a deviation from the current stance of the al-Sharaa administration?
So I'll speak from experience, and I've been on the ground in Damascus. We have tried to organize and make arrangements with different ministries, and unfortunately, at the moment, it is a little bit unorganized. And so I do believe that there could have been some miscommunication and something that was overseen. I'm glad they had it canceled immediately. And so, again, this is a new government that's learning. We should give them the benefit of the doubt, but again, measurable progress. So the fact that this event was canceled, I think, is a good sign.
All right. So giving the benefit of the doubt to the newbie, What about the flip side? Is the West being too naive? We take a very short break and dive in further into the Western stance vis-a-vis al-Sharaa. Quick break. We'll be right back.